Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sonnet, the owner and creator behind Sonnet's Garden Blooms, and in today's video, we are creating a sign for my garden. If you guys watched my last live, you'll know that I took a bushel basket and upcycled that for my front yard vignette, and today we are taking a real old piece of wood that I had in my stash and we are creating a sign for that same vignette. So I can't wait to hear what you guys think in the comments after you watch the video. After I got back from the post office, I went out into my stash of wood and I found this beauty. I know many of you are probably wondering, why did I hold on to it? Well, you'll see in today's video. Before diving in today's video, let's talk about the post office. I went there and I brought load after load after load into the post office. And you guys, the maker's boxes are officially shipped. Now let's dive right back into today's video. So what I have envisioned for this board is I want like an old vintage looking sign, and you need an old vintage looking board to try to replicate that. So I am using the white from the Cottage Colors, which is white linen, and I am just gonna kind of like dry brush it on, and I just have an old chip brush and I am just randomly dry brushing this all over. I don't want it super thick or anything like that. I want a little bit of the wood to be popping through, so I don't want perfect coverage, because what I'm going to do after this, I'm going to bring it back outside and we're going to distress it and sand it even more to really make it look old, worn, and vintagey. Now we're taking the hand sander and I am just going to randomly sand all over the board. I'm just going to let the board do the talking and really show whatever it wants to. I want it just to look naturally old, worn, and distressed, and I just love how some of that other paint's popping through. If you actually notice, there was a little bit of pink still on the board, and I had to actually go back and look at the original clip and realized I grabbed a board that had pink on it. But I loved it. I'm glad that it was there. And then a couple areas I just sanded a little bit more. Here is what it looks like, and there's that knot, and I just love how it just looks old and worn, real natural. Now I decided I wanted to use the stamp set called Mercantile from IOD, and this is from their last release, and it is definitely new to me still because I have yet to use it. I had been dying to use it from the moment I saw it. I loved how it has more of like a farming type of feel to it, and with the grain sack stripes, the wheat and all that good stuff. And being from Wisconsin, those are things that you definitely see. So if you haven't used an IOD stamp set yet, when you purchase it, you do have to season it. So you just take a piece of very light grit sandpaper and sand all over your stamps. And this will actually season it and prep it for ink. I have been asked, does this hurt the stamps? It does not. It actually is good for the stamps, and the IOD sisters recommend doing this. So I completely sand it and then I wipe them down and they are ready for ink. Now, when I said that I wanted to use this stamp set on this sign, that is totally true, but I did not know how I wanted to use the stamp set. So we're going to create this together, and you're going to kind of see my thought process as I go along. And the really cool thing about a set of stamps or a transfer is that you can create your own custom unique sign. You don't have to replicate what I'm doing. You may not like what I'm doing or how it came out, but you can create something completely custom that you love of your very own. So this is just how like my whole thought process went. Now I am using the IOD permanent ink, and when you purchase the ink, you do need to purchase a stamp pad as well, because you'll just receive the bottle of ink otherwise. When you get it, you just squirt the ink onto the pad and then it's ready to use. Now I wanted to put this directly in the center, and I lined everything up. And the key to using these stamps is once you place them, you just go all in. So you can't lay it down, pick it back up because it has ink on it. So once you lay it down, put your hand in the center, hold it, and then rub over each of the inked items. And that way you'll get a really nice transfer of that ink onto whatever piece that you're using. When you're done, pick it back up, and there you have it. I love how this looks, and now I'm going to continue on building on the sign. The next step, I decided I wanted to add the grain sack stripe, and at first I was going to do it just vertical next to each on each side of what I've already stamped. And then I got the idea that I wanted to go directly in the center, and that is what I did. So I lined it up, which I probably should have measured this. I eyeballed it. And when you're doing this taping, it is much harder to eyeball something. So it may not be in the center completely, but I think it looked pretty good. So I eyeballed it, I laid it down, and again, rubbed it all over. And then I'm gonna do the exact same thing on the other side. And this is when it kind of got a little wonky, and then I had to improvise. I'm doing the exact same thing like I said on the other side, and this is when the stamp actually was not perfectly level, and this really bothered me. I tried to embrace the imperfections of a piece, but this bothered me that it was up a little bit and that I thought it was noticeable. Even though this is going to be out in my yard, people are not going to be analyzing it like in I mean, they're not going to go to some art museum and be looking at this and say, oh, Sonnet had this a little crooked, but it bothered me. So this is what I came up with as a solution. My solution is to use that grain sack stripe and put it vertical and just add a little bit more dimension to my piece or added interest. And by doing this, then on the other side, you could not see the wonkiness. It kind of camouflaged it. So I did that on both sides. A couple things too, I had to re-ink up my grain sack stripe a second time. I thought it was going to fit perfectly, but the board was just a little bit wider than the grain sack stripe was. So I just added, I lined it back up, and on each of the edges, I just added a little bit, and you could not even tell. So I think it turned out real great. And like I said, it kind of camouflages it, so you actually don't even notice it. And then as I build on this sign, again, add more added interest to the sign really prevents you from seeing that it is not perfectly straight. Now I decided to add a little bit to each of the sides. I probably could have left it like this. I just felt like it was a little blah. So I am going to put a chicken on one side, and I think I'm going to do the cow on the other. So I'm inking up the chicken. I then decide to put the same type of design as well. So I ink that up, and then I wanted to put it right in the center of that grain sack stripe. And so I do the exact same thing. I lay it down, I hold it in place, and then I rub over everything. And I wanted it to have a really good impression because it's over that grain sack stripe. And I think it looked awesome. I like it. I like how it's like a smaller, downsized version of the center. Now I'm thinking that I needed a little something, some wording, and then I saw that number 7 and I thought that looked kind of cool, so let's add that. So I inked that up and then I put it right underneath. And again, I went all in, laid it down, rubbed it. I think it looks pretty awesome. So now let's work on the other side. On this side, I decided that I was going to go with the cow, so I took off the chicken and I inked up the same design, which I don't even know what that's called, but I really liked how it's like a miniature version of what is in the center, and I line it all up. I try to see exactly where it was compared to the other side, and I go all in, I lay it down, and again, I do the exact same thing. I rub all over, and once I get this on, then that's when I'm going to add the cow. Now keep in mind, I could have removed the cow and put it on a piece of thin mount, and I just decided instead of doing that, I'm just going to ink it up and lay it down that way. You can do it either way. It's much easier to remove the cow, put it on a piece of thin mount, ink it up that way, because I definitely stood the chance of inking up one of the other stamps. Laid it down, did the exact same thing. I loved it, but again, I felt like this needed a little bit of something on this side as well. What I'm using is where it says Dry Goods Company. So I go in and I ink just that, and there was a stamp like right on top of it. I end up having to remove that stamp, and I just left the dry goods on there, inked it up, and then I stamped that, put that other stamp back, and you guys, I'm loving how this is turning out. Now, I think I should have stopped here, but I kept going. And keep in mind, sometimes that is a curse where you want to keep adding and you probably shouldn't. So I decided that there was some empty space underneath and an empty space above on each side. And I thought it would look kind of cool if I just put this one kind of like design on each of those. And looking back, I preferred it without it, but once I put it on the left-hand side, I just decided I was not going to add it to the right-hand side. So what I did is I inked it up and I laid it down, made sure it was in the spot that I wanted it, and then again, laid it down, rubbed it. I don't think it adds that much interest to it. Let me know in the comments what you think. I think I probably should have left it off, but I mean, it doesn't hurt it either. The very last thing that I decided to do was take my ink pad with the black and I just kind of rubbed it randomly around the edges. It just reminds me kind of like of a dark wax or like dark distressing, and I just randomly put it here and there, and I just think it makes it look old and aged, just really enhances it all the more. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. It was the first time that I've played around with Mercantile, the new IOD stamp. Well, new to me. I've had it for a bit, but I've not yet played around with it. You guys, there are so many possibilities with that set of stamps. I can, envision like stamping pillowcases, more, different types of signage. And I was thinking about, I really wanted a more neutral palette, but tomato would have been perfect with it. Turmeric, bringing in those yellows and reds that you see in like vintage signs. So again, I kept it real basic because that is what I was looking for. And again, I just was building it as I went. So it's for my front yard. I am going to put it in a vignette. I found this really cool old like wood couch and chair, and I painted it the same color, red, that is actually in my barn quilt, which is on the front of my garage. And the bushel basket that I made for that area is going to be perfect. And I think the sign is going to fit in just great as well. So I can't wait to show you as I'm pulling it all together. I definitely need to work on my yard. As I'm looking, things are a bit overgrown. My husband was in the yard just chopping away, getting rid of all kinds of weeds and all that good stuff. So but this past week, I have been extremely busy. Thank goodness I have my husband to attend to things that I kind of push to the wayside as I introduce new things to my business. So the first round of the boxes went out. So last week I launched my Makers box, and it is my DIY subscription box. So if you haven't heard of it, I do have information listed below, and it was an amazing launch. And I want to thank each and every one of you who subscribed. I appreciate it. And there will be additional spots available for July. So if you guys followed along during my June launch, I did have a stretch goal and I missed it just by a little. Those boxes will be available for the July box, or for the July subscription box. So if you guys want to hop onto the subscription, you're going to be able to do that. And if anybody drops off, those spots will be open as well. So I will continue to build my wait list. So anyone on that wait list will receive an email saying that the boxes are available. And so June 27th, I will reopen up the subscription boxes, and any that are available still for my total goal, or any boxes that anybody lets go will be available for you. So once those are filled though, then the July box will close, and then we'll do the same thing in August. So I talked to everyone, and they said that I should try to grow or open it back up in September, which, you guys, it is my first fall box. So be watching for that as well. But right now we're just gonna try to hit my stretch goal. And then in September, we are gonna do a relaunch and then open it up for additional spots. All right, you guys, have yourselves a great evening. I will be back on Friday. I wanna do a thrift to treasure. I have a bunch of items that I definitely need to flip, so be watching for that, and we will see you then. Bye.